Title 42 was originally implemented as a health policy by former President Donald Trump, ostensibly to keep COVID-19 cases out of the country. But since its inception, it was widely perceived as a tool to keep migrants out. Title 42 allowed border police to expel migrants back to Mexico without a chance to claim asylum. It didn't succeed in keeping the number of crossings down, as many who were turned back tried over and over again to get into the U.S. Human rights groups have documented thousands of horrendous violent attacks on those expelled under Title 42. When running for office, Joe Biden promised to build a more humane immigration system. But as Title 42 is set to expire, his plans to regulate migration have seen even members of his own party accusing him of criminalizing those seeking protection. Meanwhile, authorities at places of entry are preparing for a surge in arrivals and a time of uncertainty.
This is one of the busiest border crossings along the U.S.-Mexican border in Texas. Every day, thousands of people cross legally from Ciudad Juárez in Mexico to El Paso in the United States. But in the focus of the border agents are the migrants who cross unofficially. Roughly 7,000 migrants cross every day through unofficial paths into the United States without documents. Border Patrol agents estimate that once Title 42 is lifted and all asylum seekers are again given due process, the number will reach a peak of 10,000 or even 12,000 migrants per day. They have arrived from Venezuela. Diogenes is injured. He can't walk anymore. The journey was tough and lasted more than 3 months.
Venezuela, Colombia, Panama, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Honduras, Guatemala, Mexico, all of that mainly walking. I was also put in jail on the Mexican side. You have to watch out all the time, and there's the risk of being kidnapped and other things.
His biggest fear after surviving the dangerous journey is to now be deported back to a country where he can't live in peace. Douglas is not afraid. He is frustrated. He's thinking of turning himself into the next border police facility. The risk is significant.
Everything is possible. They can process you and then you have legal status for a year. But they could also send you back, and then you start from zero.
He tells us he's tired. He has been jailed in 2 different countries. He has been beaten up and robbed. He says he has no other choice now than to risk it. He decides to turn himself in. And he's not alone.
All these migrants were until recently on the Mexican side. They were living there under very poor conditions until they decided to cross over to the United States, most of them without documents. Here in El Paso, the border police has been handing out this flyer in Spanish. They're telling them that if they crossed over in an unofficial way into the United States, they should turn themselves into a border police facility, like the one you can see behind me, to start their legal process. They promise that they will bring them into the official process to claim asylum here in the United States, and that is what all these migrants are hoping for.
Although Title 42 will officially be lifted on May 11th, the border police are already processing migrants. Many of them were detained for days, then released with temporary documents.
In my documents, they say I have to present myself next year, 2024, on December 17th in Florida.
By handing out these permits to stay and dates for court hearings that will take place in other states, Texas is trying to prepare for the official lifting of Title 42. The big problem is that no one really knows how big the influx of immigrants will be. Most fear total chaos in the midst of what is already a migration crisis at the border.
Carolina Chamoy filed that report and joins me now. Carolina, good to see you. Let's start with the basics. Why are so many people arriving at the border ahead of Title 42 being dropped?
There's not a logic behind that, Nicole. It's more an emotional decision that they're taking. 2 weeks ago, that's what people who have shelters here were telling me. A lot of migrants starting arriving here in El Paso. A lot of them, and I've been talking to them yesterday, the day before yesterday, a lot of them don't even know what Title 42 is. They haven't been studying what this means for them to enter the United States or not. They just know that some things might change at the border. And on the other side, on the Mexican side, I've been there many times. The shelters are just packed. People are sleeping in the street. So it's really more a frustration coming out from them, and the decision that they're taking, it's more an emotional decision, not really a logical one, the decision to come over to the United States even without papers.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like most migrants entering the U.S. from here on out will be denied asylum. Can you break down what the Biden administration's policy here is going to be?
They're rolling out this new rule indeed, and this is a rapid expulsion of the migrants arriving here. The rule will start midnight, Thursday midnight, and this is a rule that is very similar to a rule from the Trump era that required that migrants seek asylum in another country, not in the US, in another country before entering the United States and before doing so in the United States. This is the same rule, a very similar rule that Biden is rolling out now, and this is what the civil society is criticizing, because in a way it replaces Title 42. It's very similar to Title 42. It just has a different name, and it will start once Title 42 ends.
Mm-hmm. Joe Biden promised during the campaign to handle migration in a more humane way than his predecessor, Donald Trump. But now many criticize, as you already pointed out, that his policies look very much like a continuation of Trump's. The ACLU has actually already expressed an intention to sue. So how do people there at the southern border feel about that new approach?
The ACLU already sued back then when Trump was president, and he brought out his transit ban that was very similar to the current rule that President Biden is bringing out. So they would probably do that again, and perhaps they will have success again with that. So the White House is saying that they're still trying to bring order and help bring migrants into the United States, but in a legal way. And this is why they started saying that they want to tackle the root causes. The Vice President Kamala Harris is in charge of that. She hasn't been doing that much about it, though. And now there are certain centers for migrants that they're building in Guatemala and in Colombia to help migrants so that they don't have to do all the way to the United States to claim asylum, but to claim it there in those centers. So they are still saying they're seeking a humane migration policy, but at the same time, they're asking Congress to do something, and Congress is blocked in that sense now. There are the far-right Republicans and the conservative Democrats who are trying to rule out something, but there's nothing really coming out of that.
Mm-hmm. President Biden has acknowledged that the situation at the border will probably be chaotic for a while. How are authorities and humanitarian agencies and volunteers preparing for the people arriving?
Exactly. As you remember, last week, President Biden deployed 1,500 troops to the border. There are already 2,500 troops here. So there are a total of 4,000 troops now along the U.S.-Mexican border. At the same time, people, Nicole, don't really know, and that's what they're telling me, how they should prepare for that, because no one really knows what to expect starting the lifting of Title 42. Now there is this new rule, but still there are around 150,000 people over there on the Mexican side waiting to come over, and some already started a couple of days ago or even 2 weeks ago. So no one really knows what number of people will be coming over to El Paso in the next days or even weeks.
Carolina Chimoy reporting from El Paso. Thank you so much.